Very good. All right, comments from the public. Again, I want to encourage anybody there's two opportunities to comment at this meeting. It's going to be this section, which is comments from the public, which relate to items not on the agenda. And then there is, when we get to the items that are on the agenda, another opportunity to comment on those. So if you want to comment on either, I need the yellow cards. But right now, the more important one will be comments from the public. So let me read the rules of the road for that. Under comments of the public. Under Government Code, Section 54954.3a, members of the public have the right to address the governing board on any items of interest, providing it relates to the subject matter jurisdiction of the school district. In other words, something that we have control of. In accordance with Board Policy B29323, each speaker is allocated a total of 5 minutes to address the board for a maximum of 20 minutes on each subject matter. While the above referenced Government Code allows speakers to criticize the district's policies, procedures, programs, services, employees, or us, I added that part. The district does have a current policy, BTAR 1312, specific to complaints against employees. Should comments from the public pertain to a specific district employee, the board requests that the complaint first be submitted in writing to the employee's immediate supervisor for investigation. The board does not take action or discuss items not appearing on the agenda. The board values public comments, and this is important and true, and wishes to convey that although board members cannot discuss items that are not on the agenda, we listen carefully and appreciate and value input from the public. Okay? So, let's see what I've got here real quick. Okay. I've got 4 that relate to using Wi-Fi as connectivity in schools, and 1 that relates to saving money in the technology plan. I think this is you, Mr. McGavin, so as long as you're not discussing Wi-Fi, that will be a separate item. Okay? So the first person, well, actually, since you have 2 of these in here, you're going to get 5 minutes, so you can split it however you want between those 2 items. Let's start with saving money in the technology plan.
Well, actually, if I'm only going to have 5 minutes in total, then I will actually keep that for a future meeting. I will.
Which one?
The saving money in technology.
Oh, very good. So we'll save that for next time. So I'm open to which one of you would like to start. I've got Paul, Sarah, Jeff, or James. Who would like to be first up at the podium?
I think it would be good to have Sarah up first. And if it's okay, I just want to make sure there's a couple of guidelines. We have a couple of things that would be good to share with the group. That would be visual and audio. And it doesn't look like there's a projector here tonight to be able to show it visually. So at least we'll be able to share it auditorily.
I would be happy to take public comment from you at the podium. Tonight, I'm not interested in any audio or video presentations.
Okay, and is there a reason why you can dictate how we present our public comment?
Absolutely, because this is my meeting. This is a meeting of the Petaluma City Schools Board of Education. It's not a public meeting. It's a meeting that we have in public. So that's a difference that's important.
Okay, how's that different?
It's not a public meeting. You don't get to run it. I get to run it.
I understand that, it's public.
So as the president of this board, I'm telling you that I've given you a wide latitude over the last 3 or 4 meetings to present YouTube videos and other canned presentations that I'm not willing to do tonight. So if you'd like to get up and speak, I'd love to hear you speak. If you'd like to send us a link, I think I've offered you that opportunity before, to something that maybe is audio-visual for us to look at, we'd be happy to look at that.
That's great, I can do that. And I have sent you many links in the past.
Mm-hmm.
That's good, and I'm willing to do it again.
Great. So who do you want to start with?
Okay.
I'm sorry, you again?
My name is Sarah.
Sarah.
Sarah Slaychick. My daughter Tabitha is going to be a first grader at Cherry Valley, and my son Jacob is still in preschool at Spring Hill. Paul brought this to our attention about the Wi-Fi in the schools, and I think that if there's an option that's easy, which is what we've done for so long, is having it be wired and it saves us money, then why not? I think that if there's any question of whether or not there could be future problems with health and safety, then I would really encourage the school board and the community at large to explore and really kind of take seriously the idea of keeping our schools wired and keeping that safety hazard down until we know more about it and until it gets more safe.
Thank you very much. So either Jeff, James, or Paul.
James, you want to speak? No? I'm taking my 5 minutes.
I'm sorry, that was Jeff?
James said no.
James said no.
He's just a body.
Yeah.
In support.
Jeff is late, so it's only going to be me, and I will take my 5 minutes.
James, you're in support of that conversation, that was just.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm here to speak about the important measurement of how we know how much Wi-Fi is actually being projected onto our children. And this came from some detailed conversations that I had with the NCRP, which is the National, I'll look it up right here in my notes. But I've talked to senior officials at the FCC and the NCRP. And the NCRP is what they actually depend on to set the federal standard. And I talked to the executive director. So I've gotten some very good information from our federal government on how to interpret our standards and how to accurately then measure how much of the radiation is going into the classrooms. So what we have learned is that our federal guideline comes from a 1986 study. And nothing has been revised since 1986. So the whole cell phone revolution and Wi-Fi and all the learning that we have from 27 years of study haven't been reflected in our national guideline. So our guideline really comes from the 1950s, and then there was one study done in 1986, and they set on a standard. And that standard is a very large number. It's 10 million microwatts per meter squared. Sounds like a big mouthful, microwatt, but essentially it's a measure of electricity. And electricity is something that can travel in wires, and it's something that we're choosing to spray into the air. And when we actually spray it into the air, we're doing it using the laws of physics. And every single microwave radiation of any type moves at the speed of light, which is over 6 million miles an hour. And so all of that actually pierces your body and your brain on the way to where it's going. And there's a lot of studies that are saying that way too much of it is being put into our environments, and it is truly affecting all of our physical functions and our mental functions. And so what we would like to do is actually get an accurate picture of what the Wi-Fi routers in the Petaluma City schools are doing to the rooms and to the children, and to be able to calculate that. How do we do that? Well, we all have used a microwave oven. And when you use a microwave oven, you have an option for cooking a potato. And you can put it in on full power for about 5 minutes, and your potato gets cooked. Or you can actually cut it down to half power and put it in for 12 minutes, and the potato gets cooked also. But you have to do both. You have to put it in the oven, and you have to spend some time. And when you do, enough radiation has been applied to that potato to actually get the work done. The definition of work is power delivered over time. What we have for our guideline is the ability for 10 million microwatts per meter squared, but there isn't much of a concept of time. They think it can happen forever at 10 million microwatts per meter squared, and that is incorrect. The correct way to think about it is you look at your router specs, which we have, and the Meraki routers, which I have studied, have two very powerful antennas. It is about 6 times more powerful than a home router. So we put in 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz antennas on top of young children, 50-pound children. And what they're getting through the course of a 6.5-hour day is over 5 million pulses of electromagnetic radiation. And that ends up being a very large number, because you can measure at 8 feet, 16 feet, 24 feet, and 32 feet from the router, and I've done so. And when you make all the calculations, of which I have some wonderful slides that I will give you links to, and you will be able to see how it's calculated, we're at 300 million microwatts per meter squared from one router in one classroom using no wireless devices. That is 30 times more than the national standard. And that is what we're choosing to do voluntarily to our students every day that we decide to put our wireless routers on. It gets worse. When you actually then connect your laptop or your tablet or your phone or your BYOD device, now you've brought the tower directly to you. And where I was using small numbers to calculate up to 300 million, I was using numbers like 180 and 20 as my power levels. When you do this, you're at 16,000, because we measured that in Steve Bowman's office. So when you download a video on a wireless device, either a laptop, which has 3 antennas, so all of this will be summarized and placed on a public website, so we will understand how much the school is choosing to irradiate the children, and it will list all of the health effects for doing so. Thank you.
Is Jeff speaking tonight, or?
Jeff didn't make it.
Oh, Jeff's not here. That will be comments from the public, and I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. That's again for the non-agenda items. Move to reports of activities and correspondence of school board members. I'm not aware of anything that we have to report out tonight. Do we have anything to the contrary to that? No. Okay. So let's move to the approval of the consent agenda by a consolidated motion. So I will take a motion for the consent items only.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Very good. All right, so we did pull out item number 7, which was on the consent calendar, and made it a hold item, and that is the second reading of an amended board bylaw. The recommended motion that the board approve the second reading of the following amended board bylaw, BB 9323, entitled Meeting Conduct. Take a motion for that.
Motion. Second.
Discussion.
So I've been looking at other city council meetings and looking at other school board meetings, and I'd like to almost tighten this up even tighter than we have it. There's some things I think that could be added to this. I'm also not sure I want to completely restrict the technology use during meetings. I think that there could be appropriate times, and I don't want to completely eliminate the opportunity for that. But there's also things I've been looking at other meetings that I think should be added to our policy. If you're going to use, this is if we decide to take that added language out about technology, then it needs to be, other places make you submit it to the board 72 hours in advance. If you're going to show a video, it needs to be submitted to the board 72 hours in advance. If you're going to hand out literature, it needs to be submitted to the board 72 hours in advance, to give the board time to look at it. There's other things that comments and statements should be addressed to the board, not the audience. I think that's an appropriate piece of language that could be added. Applauding that a displays of approval or disapproval are inappropriate for the meeting. I think that's language that could be added. The submitting of information ahead of time. I just feel that we have a lot of really important issues to cover, and it's not necessarily that we're saying one issue is more important than the other, but like last time we had teachers that were waiting on a really important end of the meeting agenda item about their contract negotiations. And the last couple of meetings, they've had to sit through a lot of the exact same information on Wi-Fi, or very, very similar. So while taking technology and saying it's completely impermissible, but maybe language saying that once we've approved it ahead of time and you've done it once, that's your shot. We're not going to listen every meeting to repeat videos about the same issue. That kind of makes sense. So anyway, I kind of wanted to talk about that before we just approved this, and I don't know if anybody has any.
Regarding the 72 hours, I know that there are times when we have agenda items that I know staff, particularly the budget stuff, sometimes isn't available 72 hours.
No, I mean public comment, when they know they're going to come and speak to public comment and they know they're gonna show a video.
Oh.
Because we know Paul's had known the things he's gonna show,
Right, right.
because he's been telling us
Right.
3 weeks ago that he's gonna be here this week and the next week and the next week and the next week. So if he knows he's gonna hand out a handout, or he wants to present a 3-minute during his allotted time, then he needs to set it ahead of time so we can view it, make sure it's appropriate, have time if we want to contact him and ask questions, have time if we want to research a little bit. Because especially in public comment, if it's not on the agenda, we also can't engage and talk back. And so I just think that's something to look into. The other thing too is, and Steve, maybe you can help me understand this. I don't quite understand why when we have public hearings or we have presentations, why the public can talk for 40 minutes if they'd like on an issue. In other words, most city councils and school board meetings, they have either a 3-minute or 5-minute time slot for the different, whether it's on the agenda or it's not an agenda item. And then they'll let you, some places will let you only concede, 2 people can concede their time, so you get no more than 9 minutes or 10 minutes on an item. But then when we come to presentations, we allowed Paul to participate like 10 or 15 minutes on that item. And I'm just wondering if everyone wants to do that, we don't have a time limit. Those teachers could have been waiting till midnight that night. So can we or can we not limit that time frame as well? That if there's a presentation, like the technology plan, that's on the agenda, it's not a consent item, it's not a hold item, but it's on the agenda, it's a presentation or public hearing, that you too only get your 3 or your 5 minutes. And again, I think that it can get very political and very adversarial, and I don't think coming to the board to convince the school board to do something and turning your back and talking to the audience. Get a Facebook page, send out a flyer, pay a community organizer, but to come here and then use that as a platform to engage the community, I think it's an abuse of the free speech at public comment.
Right. And I think that for me, that is one of the reasons why to me, it isn't appropriate to have the use of technology and audio during the public comment time. I want that time to be available for true, somebody wants to make us aware of a particular situation, and they've gotten their 5 minutes, and I appreciate that quite a bit.
And I do think it's important, because if you just play video over and over, the couple people that we convinced to speak, instead of just conceding the time for the video, had really persuasive things to say.
Exactly, yeah.
on Paul's behalf, on that and his
Right.
issue. But anyway, the other things I was interested in adding to the policy as well.
And I have heard that you can limit the amount of time people present on an agendized item. We have not, as a district or the board, set timeline or time limits as to seeking input and getting information during an agendized item.
Well, and don't you think, Steve, there's 2 reasons for that. One is that we've not yet really had controversial items that were so, pro and con divided room that we went until midnight or 1 in the morning.
For years, anyway, we haven't.
In my 7 years
Right.
here, we really haven't. Lacrosse possibly. And the other is just a general desire too here, especially on agendized items, things that are in front of us for some type of decision, as much input as we can. And so I Sherry, just sort of differentiate there between public comment. I probably would lean to what Mary was saying, which was, to me, public comment is, it's almost like, hey, you guys, do you not understand that you're missing the boat here completely? Have you not seen this issue or problem or concern? It's not on your agenda. It should be on your agenda. It should be in your sight. You should know what's going on. I want you to be aware of this, in lieu of what I believe is turned into a commercial, which is not appropriate for this board. And it's partially because we're televised, and that's not, this issue, and I don't need to bring this back to this whole Wi-Fi deal, but this issue has been brought to our attention. And it was brought into a public, in comment, and then we actually, last week put the technology plan on the agenda, and there was, I was not here, but my understanding, significant discussion. So, to me, in that sense, public comment worked.
Well, I think public comment, we need to give wide latitude and encourage people. I like participation. I like people to come. I like to hear their ideas, whether it's a suggestion, a complaint, or whatever. And not to personalize it to Paul, I mean, he's just basically an example. I mean, I don't think we need to personalize, whether it's Wi-Fi or somebody was talking about dogs on campus or any of the other issues we've had. He maybe has shown us some areas we need to tighten up, or there's been some envelope pushing and stuff, which, you know, that just happens, and, you know, it's up to us to, like you said, we run the meeting, we shape the meeting within the boundaries of the law. So I do believe that you need to kind of afford everybody the way to get their message, and we might have a public speaker that maybe needs an assisted speaking device or something. So I think we need to make sure we're cognizant of that. That's right, to have somebody out here that had trouble, or, you know, anyhow, I think everybody knows the concept, and if someone tries to take advantage of the rules, so to speak, then it's up to us to either, like we're doing now, revisit the policy, or the president to kind of rein it in. So you're never going to have a policy that survives for the ages, because things change. And so we just need to, I think, periodically, as we're doing now, address it. And depending on what our district council says, we can, you know, bar or prohibit. If we think that we should bar or prohibit it, then I think we need to bar or prohibit it. That's my 2 cents worth.
And then I'd like to follow up with Sherry's comment about the time limit on agendized items. I think one of the things we have done in the past is when we had multiple speakers, you know, who had various ideas, and it was going longer than anticipated, one of the things we asked the audience was, if you have something new to share.
Sure.
In order to tighten up the, you know, the evening. And we have that prerogative.
Right,
So-
Which we may need to do tonight.
Right.
But differentiate for me, didn't we have 3 different series here? We had public comment, you spoke. We had an agenda item, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, you spoke. And then didn't we also have a presentation on technology where you spoke, and that you were able to speak for about 10 or 15 minutes?
No, I had public comment, and I commented on the technology plan. Those are the 2 things I did.
No, and he also commented on our reading of this policy.
Correct. This policy.
I'm gonna go back, because I
2 agendized items and 1.
And one-
but
did not
one
present
was
a
on the
presentation.
agenda, but it was a it was during a
No,
presentation.
there was a presentation, and then there was an action on that presentation later. He commented on the actions on
And
that
how
presentation.
much time was he given?
There was no limit on the time that he was given.
Okay, why is there no limit on that time?
Again, going back to what you said,
It's at the
we
discretion
want,
of
before
the
the board makes a
president to-
decision.
We want to get as much input as possible.
But it's at
But
the discretion.
At the discretion, so we can.
And we have an 11 o'clock cutoff too. So, and we've also moved items on the agenda around to accommodate that previously.
Well, again, in
You know,
fairness,
to get things in front like this, excuse me, like, to get like the student reports and things in front.
in fairness to Paul, I mean, he didn't, I mean, I ran the meeting last time, I don't think he commented in any area he wasn't permitted to comment on.
Right.
Yeah, no,
Except
I'm
for
not
the,
mad at Paul.
except for the assisted
This-
living, assisted, tell the elder care. The assisted, or electronic media devices, there wasn't, I mean, that we're currently entertaining whether that's gonna be allowed or not. There really wasn't anything out of the ordinary, other than it was a topic that we'd heard before and heard his views on before, so.
Yeah, I'm not upset about how that meeting went with or with what Paul was allowed to speak to. It's just suddenly we're taking technology and kind of taking a harsh stance on taking that out of the meeting. But if you look at our policy and you look at other policies, it doesn't make sense to me that that's a thing we're putting language in about when a lot of other things are open-ended. So I'm not upset with how much he spoke or how much he was allowed to speak at that meeting. I think that meeting was actually run very well, and it was fine. It's just, let's be honest, this taking the technology thing out has come about coincidentally now, right? When Paul's come with all this
Sure.
bringing the stuff. So
Well,
we're
it's not
talking
been,
about.
it's not been an issue before.
Why?
We've not had people come in public comment and.
Okay, so I just wanted to be clear about why, why I'm uncomfortable with that language and other language that I think would be
Okay, well,
good.
why don't we just kind of circle around and try to.
I'm done.
To Sherry's point, perhaps we could entertain, based, to her point on the 72-hour prior notice of what you were presenting, that then maybe, at the president's discretion, yeah, that sounds like something that would be more efficiently presented or better presented by, video or, laptop or whatever, if if you're so inclined, on if we're gonna go with 72-hour prior notice.
Well, I don't want to have a prior notice on public comment. I think the public could be sitting here and have a concern that's
No,
not
it's
in the
not
agenda.
on public comment. I was like,
Okay.
you knew you're gonna show a
If you're
video.
presenting
You
anything
know,
to it.
I'm gonna
I
take
see.
this video, like he's told us, next week I'll be here with the such and such video, with prior notice so that we could view it.
You're talking about extemporaneous,
Okay,
just
okay.
someone gets up and says, oh, that.
I'm not shy, I'm not really. If anyone knows
No, I know.
my environment, I'm not against public comment.
My feeling is to not have video, audio on public comment, but, that's, you know, it's, there, I don't mind having an exception for unusual circumstances.
I'm gonna go back to what I originally said, which is that my view of what public comment is the ringing of the bell, that this is something that the board needs to be concerned about. We should get it in our sights. I feel that I'm quite competent to do that without having to be shown pictures. What you said, I took great notes, I think. Today, I didn't need to have a picture to tell me that. I'd much rather, as we determined when we had some people at one of these audio presentations actually have to speak to what they were going to present, I found much more interesting what they had to say than what the video said. The video is information. I think we all take our job very seriously when it comes to people send me stuff to read, I read it. I get emails, I read it. If I get a link to stuff, I go to it, generally speaking. So I just don't feel it's needed, and to me it's a distraction, it slows the meeting down, so that's
Okay.
why I would support this. So
Okay.
we've got a motion and a second.
Do we have other?
Oh,
possible-
excuse me, you put in a speaker card.
I did,
Please,
yes.
come on up.
Thank you. This is the second time this has been put on the agenda, and I made some specific comments about the first time, and I think I'm going to reiterate a few and make a few more new ones. There is law that actually directs how we should do this, and none of the law has any language in there whatsoever about whether they should use AV or not AV.
Does it preclude it? Does it preclude us setting up a restriction?
I'm just telling you, well, I'm going to read some of the law.
Oh, I got it, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So every agenda for regular meetings shall provide an opportunity for members of the public to directly address the legislative body on any item of interest to the public. That's what it says. And it doesn't really say that we should be restricted in any way. We also have a First Amendment right
Is
to
that the
speak.
entire law, Paul, or is that just a portion of the law?
That's a portion of it. Would you like me to read the rest? Because I'd like to do that outside my 5 minutes.
You don't need to read the rest, I was just asking you if you had read it.
Oh, I have read it all. Yeah, and I made detailed comments that I'd emailed to everyone, okay? What I'm really getting to is that public comment is the public's ability to speak to the board and to the public. The TV that is here is a public resource, and it is to educate the rest of the public as well. And so we should have the right to use our equipment if we think that is a good thing to educate the public. It is nice to educate you. It's also important to educate the public. And so I can understand why you may want to restrict usage of maybe equipment that you might decide to put out here or not put out here, but I don't understand how it is within our First Amendment rights to say that you don't have the same rights as other people who will be presenting in a meeting, where you do allow them to make presentations with audiovisual materials. It seems to me you don't want to set up a prejudicial two-step system. People we deign to put on the agenda can have all the support that they want. People who come up with public comment are second-class citizens. And contrary to a comment you made directly in a meeting 4 meetings ago, where you pointed out to everyone here, isn't it amazing to see how we're using the computer for every presentation? Isn't that really what we're doing today? Isn't that a step of our technology in our society, which we're also trying to teach in our schools? So the point of using a video, the point of using a slide, is to actually reinforce through expert testimony and expert opinion directly from the source, because we didn't have this capability years ago. But we do have the ability to actually bring expert scientists into this room so they can speak directly to you. The only reason I have brought them in is that when I first shared them with the executive team, no action was taken. And when I presented all of my links and all of my videos and everything to all of you, no response was given. And so it all just lands with a dull thud. And I have no idea what happens because I get no feedback from anyone. And so that is why I wanted to bring it to the board, so not only the board would be educated, the public would be educated. Because these are very important issues from a public health and safety standpoint. And so what I'm saying is that we have important First Amendment rights, and I believe I do have my right to bring my monitor and set it up right here, and use my computer as I need to make whatever comment I need in the time allowed, no extra time, and make sure that that all gets done, okay? As long as it takes no extra time, as long as it's all within the realm of the law, I don't believe you have the right to restrict how we make a public comment.
And I think it's important that you said correctly that you don't believe that we have that right. I don't agree with you.
I hear you.
appreciate you saying that.
Right.
I don't agree with you. I don't believe that's your First Amendment right.
Okay, and a lawyer probably has a different opinion. So if we actually need to challenge it through legal means, we may do so. And so the point is that when we do come, and I do have the ability to with the projector, how will it be enforced?
You have a question?
Yeah, I actually had a comment. I wanted to make note of, he commented that the cameras are public, and we do have public access television, and I would strongly encourage him to use that forum as a way to get his message across to the entire community. Because one of the purposes of our school board meeting is to do the business of the school board, and we have the public comment available, again, as Troy said, to bring note to certain items, which you have done, and we continue to still have to address our business going forward. So that's why there are controls over how a meeting is run, and there are many venues for communicating with the public. So that was my comment.
Right, and you are, I'd like to follow if I may.
Please.
Okay. You are the decision makers. You are the ones that you will be making decisions and hold the liability for making those decisions. And so in this important health and safety concern, it is critically important that you hear it at the same time that the public hears it. So to me, this is the right venue because it affects all of our students, and I am very careful to bring new information each time. I am not repeating the same things. It is the same topic, but it's new analysis, new studies, new information, in the hopes that you actually will look at it, evaluate it, ask me a question or two about it, learn something from it, and take action on it. That's the most important part, is that you actually take action to protect the health and safety of our students. Currently, I'm trying to enroll my daughter in kindergarten,
Let's stick with the topic.
and I have not given consent. And that is something that has not been addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to comment that, right before we take this vote, that for those that may have missed part of this, there was, I think, 2 or 3 public comments about this subject. There was then an agendized item with a large amount of public comment and a vote. So you've been heard. A technology plan was adopted based upon your comments as well as comments from everyone else. That's where we're at. All right, so I got a motion and a second on this. All those in favor,
As
say
it-
aye.
as it's
As
written.
is. Say aye. Opposed?
Nay, yeah. Opposed.
Opposed. All right, so nothing happens.
So it's 3-2?
Let's do
2-2-2.
2-2, so what happens when you talk?
Nothing.
We'll have to revisit that.
So the policy hasn't changed.
Okay.
Item number 8, which is Administration Human Resources hold item, Superintendent's Contract. Recommend a motion that the board approve an addendum to the superintendent's contract, increasing the workdays from 212 to 220, increasing the salary by 3.77% effective July 1st, 2013.
So moved. Second.
Who's commenting?
Anyone? It's a whole bit.
This is just to bring.
No, just to bring
reinstate
forward the board,
days.
yep, to reinstate the days the same as.
And this is the same as we've offered
provided to
everyone,
all-
right? No one's
offered to all
getting
employees.
more than anyone else.
Okay,
Right.
and this is the result of making you work more.
You have to work harder, right? Is it harder too? You work more and harder, or just work more?
Work more days.
I'm calling you on the weekend. Those in favor?
Aye.
And I did call him a legal lie. Item number 9, there might be 1 or 2 people here about this item, I'm not really sure. Hold item, do I have public comment cards from anybody that wishes to speak
On the athletic.
on the athletic trainer? Any public comment cards from anybody? Athletic trainer position, recommend a motion that the board approve the establishment of a certified athletic trainer position effective July 1st, 2013.
Second.
Discussion?
Just to share with you that we did have a presentation to the board under public comment a couple of meetings ago, making or proposing that the board consider this. At the cabinet level, we have looked at this, considered it, do see it as a safety item, and recommend that we move forward with athletic trainer positions, one at each of the 2 comprehensive high schools, working approximately 32 weeks a year, 20 hours a week, to provide support to our athletic programs, primarily the contact sport programs.
Is there any other discussion?
You got anything? Steve, I just had a couple questions on the fiscal impact. You say it's 15,000 stipend plus 11.74 statutory benefits. So run that through with us, how that was going to work, because when we got the presentation, I thought we were going to go through the SSU program, and I thought we'd be paying 15,000. So now we're paying benefits on top of the 15,000.
It's a stipended position, but on a stipended position, you still, if you're paying in person, you're still providing workers' compensation. There's no health insurance or anything associated.
Okay, well, so it's just what our state mandates are.
Yeah, it's just the Social Security.
Okay,
workers'
that clarifies. I want to make sure we weren't
compensation.
throwing healthcare and dental and everything out at the beginning. I mean, I don't know, maybe one day it works into that, but.
It's not.
So that's just, you're talking about, okay, so, and then the other question I have is, how do we contain OT?
Again, the person's going to be required to work and only paid for on a stipended position, like our coaches are a stipended position. On occasion, they work more than, there's no overtime limit, but the requirement is that they work 20 hours.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about it blowing
There's no
up because of overtime?
Because it's a stipended position.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Anybody else? How will, is it a site decision as to how that person is allocated? Is that an athletic director?
Working with the athletic director as to which games are going to attend, because there'll probably be some split even with the athletic director as to which game they're going to be attending. They'll be attending practices as shared by the presenters at the last meeting, and obviously they'll be attending a lot more practices than they will be attending games, because they practice most every day of the week, during the week, and have a game, for instance, in football once a week and in basketball a couple times a week.
Anybody else have any other proponents?
Just that, it's not that it's not important, money's just really tight. Just the questions we're asking about benefits and overtime, and it's not because we don't want to pay.
That was part of our
It's just
consideration,
because money's so tight right now.
yeah, I mean, this person is
It's a
going to make
valuable
as
thing.
much as a person who's coaching football, basketball, and baseball, for instance, in a year. That's about all we pay them for an entire year. So this is a significant expense, but when you look at the safety of our student athletes, our recommendation is that we move forward with the position.
I actually have a couple of comments, I guess. This was brought to us with a sort of a concussion focus. And I think, as I said at the last meeting, that when we talked about this, as a parent of a concussed kid, I feel like I have actual knowledge about this, maybe more than anything else I have on this agenda. We probably talked about this, other than the budget, I guess. I want to make sure of a couple things. One, that this person doesn't take the place of our Dennis O'Neills or the trained medical folks that we have on the field to handle injuries on the field. Our EMTs, Doc Sisler's or those folks that are there to diagnose these concussions when they happen. I also want to make sure that this doesn't somehow, because there was some discussion in some of the correspondence that I saw, that this position could be a resource for letting us know when children should be allowed to go back onto the field. And I want to make sure that that is a decision made by parents and doctors and not a certified athletic trainer.
Sure.
So I guess I'm not concerned, but I just want to make sure that we're real clear on this is a value and I'm for this. And I think this is a good idea. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we don't take away from resources that we have or have this sort of creep into a greater scope than I think what this person is going to be qualified and trained to do.
Right. There will be the baseline training for concussions, and then the after concussion review of that. Because the doctor, for instance, who's looking at a student who has suffered a concussion will not have that information to know where the student was prior to
Sure.
the event. And so they will be providing assistance relative to
Absolutely
To
involved.
that.
I'm all for involved. I guess I'm
Not making the
I don't
decision.
want to take a step backwards where we have made really good progress with realizing how important this is and how dangerous this is and how it needs to be addressed. And I don't want to take a step backwards and by pulling a pediatrician or a physician. I mean, catch me if I'm wrong, and Mr. Christ, if you could help me out. You have to have a clearance from a medical doctor to get back on the field. Is that correct?
I wouldn't accept anything else.
Okay. Okay, so I just want to make sure, like I said, we don't take a step backwards and that becomes any kind of issue. Not that anybody would make bad decisions. I just want the best person out there to make that decision, making those decisions.
I kind of, I tend to agree with Troy. I think that the concussion protocols were wrapped up in this, and they're not mutually exclusive by any means,
Right.
but I look at this, in fact, it was one of Coach Chris' commentary that really made me really think about it, was all the extra time he put in, a couple others testified when we heard, made public comment, that basically the ankle taping, quite frankly, just the time involved in that, and just, you know, I'm thinking, boy, these guys really need the help, and like Troy said, it can't help but have another involved person with the child's best interest at heart. And I think it's helpful for the coaches too, because coaches are stuck, they got a lot of things going on, say game day, and there's a wobbler, well, now I got an objective viewpoint, like,
Sure.
hey coach, this kid really needs to come out.
Right.
That arm's at a weird angle, or he's holding it weird, just those kind of little things.
Sure.
And then I totally concur with Troy, we get some concussions and those kind of things, and where you have to go see a doctor, coming back is a parent-doctor decision every time. I just don't think
Medical
our personnel, it shouldn't be a coach decision, shouldn't be an athletic trainer decision. I mean, that's dangerous stuff, because if you miss, oops. And so you always want to err on the side of
That's
caution and
medical
let the
industry
parents
term.
Yeah.
and the doctors do what they need to do. Because it's one of those sacrosanct areas that every family and doctor deals with it on their own. I mean, and like Coach Chris said, you got to have the release, or you don't. So I tend to concur with Troy's analysis of the athletic trainer and kind of the concussion protocol there. And I'm sure it's going to be a work in progress to develop how it's going to all be implemented, but we need to keep all that in mind.
And again, there's two things. There's the Sonoma State program, but there's also the program that Heather Campbell's had at Casa Grande. And that's worked very effectively to
Yeah, it's kind of
help
I want
Go ahead.
as a model.
I know that some of the higher contact sports, you know, are in definite need of this. But I also want to make sure that the individual isn't spread so thin that, you know, taped ankles for tennis, having rolled ankles playing tennis, you know, some of the sports that aren't contact sports, you know, that they have access, the coaches have access to support as needed. Obviously,
Yeah.
you know, it's all a balance, but I imagine that this person would be
Yeah.
well used around sports.
I think the unintended consequence is going to be a tough job for the athletic director, pushing this person to the right place, and
Right.
keeping everybody happy.
Yeah, you're never gonna get it 100%. I mean, there's kids that have ripped up knees in volleyball, quite frankly.
Right.
We all think of football, but soccer, you know, I mean, so anytime you play sports, you know, you can get hurt.
Yeah.
I have two public comment cards I'll take real quick. Cindy Elmarie. Maybe a little acknowledgement that I said the name correctly. Thank you.
I am,
Appreciate
especially
that.
with my fast driving. Hi, I'm Cindy Almerini, this is my husband, Mike. We have 2 kids. The youngest one just graduated from CASA and have had the pleasure of Heather treating our children. In the 6 years, our kids have had 3 ambulance rides between the both of them. But something that I think that you guys need to know from a parent point of view is the first thing she always says is, this is what I think happened, this is what I think's wrong, but you need to go to the doctor. You need to make sure that the doctor checks it out, and she would never say it's okay without that doctor's approval. We had when our youngest went down with a major traumatic injury and broke his hip. The physician on the field told her to move him and told her to carry him off the field. And she said, we're not moving this kid. She knows more about these athletes, about their injuries, and takes more pride in treating these children like they are her own. She would never in a million years, and not only her, but any athletic trainer, they know these kids from the day they step on the field as freshmen. One thing she said to me when my oldest was a freshman was, he says he's in a lot of pain. I don't think anything's broken, but because I don't know him yet, we're gonna have to listen to his pain. She knows by the senior year, is this kid gonna whine about everything, or is this kid really hurt? That's what an athletic trainer has, that a physician doesn't have, that the coaches don't have, but she always makes sure that she says to us, they need to see a doctor, I need them to go to the doctor. If I need to go with you to the doctor, I want to talk to the doctor, I want approval from him. And so that is something that is important, especially the discussion that you guys have been having, whether she's going to take over for the doctor, where this athletic training position is going to take over for the physicians. It doesn't happen. And if she has to have a conversation with a physical therapist or with whoever, whether that kid's ready to go back on the field or on the court or whatever, she makes sure that that is cleared and okay by the physician. And our life as parents with our kids, and especially the youngest one's injury, has been made tremendous because of her and because of the care that she's had for the kids. And it's not just our kid who had a major injury. I've seen her, when it comes to concussions, she says to these kids, I'm sorry, I don't care how bad you want to be on that field. That's just not going to happen until the doctor says it is. I know you don't. I know you want to play. I know it's your last game of your senior year, but too bad. That's just, so that's something, I know, it's something that's very important. These kids need it. The amount of time that she spends herself right now as an unpaid athletic trainer or whatever, hours and hours, and the safety of our kids is her first priority. And any athletic trainer that's going to come work for the district, I truly believe is going to have that same importance for these kids. And I think it's something that's super important and you guys need to really consider.
Thanks. And please understand, Cindy, that our job is to give direction. So I'm certainly not implying that anything other than what you just said, but it's our job to make sure that that happens.
Right,
So
yeah.
that's how we do it, by saying that will happen.
Okay.
And I think this is Anne Reed, right?
It is, but Mike actually spoke to what I was going to say. I think it would be repetitive, so I'm okay.
Thank you.
You're
7 years, first time, right?
If I'd have known that, I would have charged her.
All right. I guess let me just finish the comment by saying I think this is a really good idea. I want to make sure that we don't have what we call Project Creep, and anything that we can do to help the kids be safer. I'm a consumer of that product. I will be a consumer of that product. So not for that reason, but because it's the right thing to do, I will do it. support this. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Can we clap? You haven't voted on that.
You
got it. You got it. Thank you very much.
I'm going to take a short break while we... All right, we're going to start back up. We're going to start back up, and we're moving over now to the business services section. Item 7 as a whole. Is that the recommended motion, the board award bid number 0413 Petaluma High School bleacher and gym floor replacement project phase 1 to HUR Flooring Company in the amount of $172,000.
Just think how easy that'd be if you're a banker.
It's $172,800 via deferred maintenance funds, and the superintendent be authorized to approve change orders up to 10% except the work is being completed.
Second.
Any comments on that?
So this was a project we've been going back and forth, as the board will recall, that we started out, we're going to do the floor, then we were going to do the floor and the bleachers because the boosters came forward. Well, we don't have the resources to do the floor and the bleachers. The floor is past due in regards to being addressed. So at this time, we're making the recommendation to do the floor only. If you turn to page 80, we do have an additive alternate of $27,300. This would be to do the floor under the existing bleachers. When we replace the bleachers in the future, there's a potential that the bleachers may not take up as much room, and there will be a strip around there when the bleachers are up. That's when PE is occurring and the like. It's not when there's an event occurring in there. It will not be noticeable when a public event is occurring and the bleachers are down. So our recommendation is to live with the old floor under the bleachers. It's not worth $27,300 in my opinion, and under the recommendation to do that strip that's under the bleachers.
Okay.
And if we replace them, then it might be time to replace
We
them.
might do the floor under them as well.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I've looked into it, and the floor is a repair. I can get that done. It's functional. It's a step towards the overall rehab that needs. But I don't know if you guys remember, but there was some discussion. If we took out the bleachers and you put in new bleachers, now we have to do a lot more, and it drives that cost over $500,000. And you start talking about, doorways and reconfigurations and, access issues. So this was, I think, a good decision by Steve that at least we get something done. And if the public wants to join us in a participation, we got grants out there, we get some nice benefactor who really wants to help us out, then we can get to that next phase. But that's quite frankly the same floor that Troy and I dribbled on. I mean, it goes back a long ways. Well, we go back. Yeah, no, you were in the Boys and Girls Club, Ricky. You're not that young. I'll spot him 11 years, but no, he played on that floor. I played on that floor. You played on that floor. So and our girls get a home field advantage right now with the floors because they know all the dead spots.
Can I just ask a quick question of the audience? Mr. Chris, since you're here and you're the resident expert, since you're the biggest user of that gym,
Yeah.
you live there pretty much. So what we're talking about is redoing the floor, but not including the parts underneath the bleachers.
Right.
So when the bleachers are out, the floor will be all new, but when the bleachers are in, their PE class, theoretically, the bleachers are in, aren't they? Or are they?
The bleachers are always all the way in.
So we never fold it back.
Well, unfortunately,
Rare.
we do when we have, because on like rainy days and things like that, where we have to have, it's kind of like a classroom.
Okay.
So when we bring the kids in, we have to pull the bleachers out. I'd say the biggest thing with the bleachers is they're old.
When you say pull them out, you mean put them back against the wall?
We have to pull them out and then push them back in. And the functioning of the bleachers are pretty poor, only on one side. The side that gets pulled out all the time, they're really poorly, they're old. I mean, I would say the biggest thing that we fight is, because I have to do it myself, and I worry for the kids for doing it, even though we do it from time to time, kids do it, because it is hard. they're really poor bleachers.
So for the purposes of redoing the floor, what we're talking, there's the bid, but the bid doesn't include the floor under the bleachers.
Right, I've heard that. I would say my only thing would be is, I don't know the construction portion of it, and I don't know if it matters. The playing portion of it, I don't, how far to the wall are they gonna actually do? Is it,
So basically, when the bleachers are pushed against the wall,
Yeah.
they're not going to take the bleachers out and do that portion. They're gonna do all the way up to
oh,
the
so
bleachers.
that's still not.
point, they're doing it up to the recess point, right?
Oh, I see.
Correct.
It's not a
But like on the wall, all the way to the walls, around the bleachers are gonna be done?
They're
Or
supposed
is
to
it
do
gonna be a
everything
square?
but under the bleachers.
What's that?
They, my understanding is they do everything but
Everything, even the threshold going into the gym?
should be doing the threshold going into the gym. Yes.
I think
Motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Figured while we have here, we might as well.
Yeah.
I'm into the public comments today as best we can.
Yeah, we don't want you getting
Yeah.
cheated out of your comment, right?
Did you fill out a card? Item number 8.
That's for my office.
Hold resolution 12-1332, the resolution 12-1332, the Board of Education, Petaluma City Elementary and Joint Union High School Districts authorizing transfers between balances and expenditures. Close of the year per Education Code 42601 be adopted.
Second.
All those in favor, any discussion? In favor?
It's the annual.
This is just
This, we do this.
Routine.
Routine, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Item 9, Resolution 12-1333, that Resolution 12-1333 of the Board of Education, Petaluma City Elementary and Joint Union High School Districts of Sonoma County, State of California, requesting fund transfer under Article 16, Section 6 of the state constitution be adopted.
Second.
Mitch?
Again, a routine for the process of closing the books for the school. And
You only have a couple of days to go.
this is it. After tonight, I'm taking days off.
I've got
So
like,
this is it.
I got like 7 pages of expense reports to say. Kidding. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item 10, hold item 2013-2014 budget. Recommend a motion, the 2013-2014 budget for the combined Petaluma City Elementary and Joint Union High School Districts be adopted.
So,
Second.
As I shared with you earlier, the multi-year projections look better than they have in a very long time. We actually see us possibly coming out of deficit spending, and that is amazing. So that is great. We may be able to look forward to adding back items that have been cut, the $11 million, that we've cut over the last 5 years, possibly looking in the future of reinstating certain things, so that's nice. So,
Very good. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Budget passes 4-0. And it felt to be of appropriate.
Wait.
So, item 11, hold deed approval. Recommend a motion that the board approve a utility easement at the warehouse transportation yards to the city of Petaluma.
Second.
It seems like we've had an unbelievable number of easements and grants and to this bus yard.
Well, the last one that we brought was for PG&E. This is actually for the city. So it's pretty much the same areas that we're talking about, and it's just access to do repairs and the like. This one is for the city of Petaluma and whatever access they need for those points.
Can we trade them off or something?
You got a lot out of that deal.
We got a lot out of the Regency easements.
Yeah.
All right.
You really did. You got a bunch of environmental stuff cleaned out.
We got landscaping.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0 passes.
From the
Any-
city.
The ADA, does anybody have any questions or comments on the ADA report? Okay, then we're going to adjourn to a closed session. Let's do that now. Good.
Let's